Utah Senator Mike Lee is introducing legislation he says will require Congress to vote on the total cost of enforcing red tape each year.
Joining us live on the KSL Newsline is Senator Lee. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
It's good to have you with us. Can you explain to us how this will work?
Sure. Right now, federal regulations, thousands of pages of do's and don'ts that Washington bureaucrats impose on the American people every year are estimated to cost American families and businesses about $2 trillion a year. This is a cost that's borne disproportionately by America's poor and middle class, and we need to put a limit on it. And so I'm introducing a Regulatory Budget Act that would cap the amount of regulatory compliance cost any federal agency could impose on the American people and require that cap to be approved and reevaluated every year by Congress.
Now, this doesn't create another level of perhaps bureaucracy within the federal government. This is just agencies need to look within themselves and try to trim their costs. Is that right?
Exactly. And importantly, it's not their cost. It's the cost they're imposing on those they regulate. And so, but you're exactly right. This doesn't create another layer of bureaucracy. It just requires Congress to do its job of making sure that our federal laws, our federal regulations in particular, aren't experiencing the kind of mission creep that they've had over the last 20 years. To put this in perspective, I said a minute ago that these federal regulations cost the American people $2 trillion a year. That's up just over 2 decades. 20 years ago when I was in law school, the estimate was about $300 billion a year. So that figure has grown roughly sevenfold in only 2 decades. That's a good example of why Congress needs not only to track, but also to limit the amount of costs that are imposed as a result of the regulatory compliance system.
You mentioned a minute ago, Senator, mission creep, but I think there has been mission expansion in some areas. I think about the FDA, and specifically about tobacco, and now there are e-cigarettes, and there are products that didn't exist before that they would need to seek out and potentially regulate. And so, how do they expand their jobs without spending more money doing so?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a good example of the fact that over time, certainly new products come into existence, and that might require new regulation. When that happens, Congress can adjust that. But the point of this is to keep members of Congress involved in the process, to make sure that members of Congress are accountable to the people for what happens in this area, to make sure that the people's elected representatives in the House and the Senate have a say in this, that they have to approve any expansion of regulatory authority.
If you don't mind me moving on to a different topic, Senator, I'd like to get your take on Donald Trump's suggestions for nominees to the Supreme Court. I understand your brother is on that short list.
He is indeed. My brother Tom serves on the Utah Supreme Court and has since 2010. He's a remarkable legal mind and jurist, and I will say that the list as a whole was outstanding, but that one name stands out in particular, and that's his.
Have your views about the presumptive nominee changed at all in recent weeks?
Well, look, I've expressed views, concerns that I have about Mr. Trump, a lot of them born of uncertainty. And, that hasn't changed, but I will say I really like the list, and I hope we'll see more things like this from Mr. Trump.
Have you had a chance to talk with your brother at all since that short list came out?
Oh, of course. I speak to my brother all the time.
Senator, we appreciate your time.